Greetings, I'm John the Verbose, and this is my video for the YTpaganChallenge Challenge week 44 on what have been your greatest influences on your journey. Let's start chronologically. There really were no pop culture influences that I can think of. Since elementary school, I've always just been fascinated by druids, ancient cultures, archaeology, stuff like that, and that has always been an interest of mine. And so I've never seen Charmed. I've never seen The Craft. I've never seen. I think Buffy was one where apparently there are Wiccans in Buffy, or yeah, like I don't really watch TV, so growing up, I know my mother wouldn't let me watch that sort of thing anyway. Yeah, there's no pop culture influences. And I was interested in druidry before World of Warcraft was created, because nowadays when you look up druids, it seems like 90% of stuff on druids is World of Warcraft related, which is a shame. So it made it a challenge for the web-based portion of my research, though early on it's like I was always going to the libraries and finding the right books on the topics, and then early on it's like there was the whole polytheistic thing that the ancient druids had that I had a hang up with, that really stopped me from exploring it in depth. And that was until I went to Ireland. And okay, I've been to Ireland 3 times in my life, and it was the second time that I was in Ireland was when I was there for a college semester. And that was extremely profound, and that's when that I dove headfirst into researching druidry and grappling again with the concept of polytheism, and then I learned of Celtic Christianity, because my background, it's like I was raised by a pack of wild Mennonites, is a phrase I like to say. Well, you got 2 different kinds of Mennonites, but I think the Mennonites I was descended from were rather conservative. So I just had these hang-ups with exploring something that would potentially make me let go of my monotheistic beliefs and worldview. But with understanding Celtic Christianity, that was my slippery slope that kind of guided me down the crooked path. And that was a good springboard, I think. And it was several more years before I started looking into specific druid orders to join. And I thought, well, which ones would I most closely identify with? And so that's when I made this whole spreadsheet, and I was like researching all the modern druid orders and putting them in nice little boxes, and so I was going kind of between the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids and the Reformed Druids of North America. And I ultimately went to the Reformed Druids of North America, obviously, because they don't try to sell you spirituality. And I know that that's kind of harsh words to say for OBOD. I know that, in my opinion, they probably have one of the most reputable programs, but also one of the most expensive programs, which I understand by and large is worth it. And I know that they did embrace a wide range of spiritual beliefs. And I guess if I had to say something critical about OBOD, I should say something critical about Reformed Druidry, and that it is a spiritual path that embraces the lowest common denominator. It's a universalist approach. It lets you fill in the gaps, that everything in ritual that's spoken, all the liturgy, it can be literal if you want it to be, or it can be symbolic if you want it to be. It can just be this huge metaphor, and if you can get it to jive with your current spiritual path, then go for it. Then they have succeeded. And so that's why the early Reformed Druids were a mixture of Christians, atheists, Jews, agnostics, I don't think Marxism is a religion per se, but that's one of them that's frequently cited among the spiritualities embraced, and that had provided an even more slippery slope for where I am now. Because where am I now? Now I'm actually, to be honest, leaning closer to the new Reformed Druids of North America, which is markedly more Neo-Pagan. And I still interpret all the different deities as being aspects of one common Earth Mother. And not all Reformed Druids see it that way. And in Reformed Druidry, that's good. It's good that you don't all see things exactly the same way, because then you're all just like mindless drones, like citing the credo or something like that. It's like in the RDNA, you make of it what you will, and therein lies the beauty. And no two paths are the same, and it's okay if you interpret things the same way as somebody else does, but it doesn't have to be that at all. Here we have a Reformed Druid Anthology 2nd edition, and I am fortunate enough to have been gifted this print, and it's got a lot of written works in it, but essentially this is available as free PDFs at www.rdna.info. And so it's full of the ancient histories, 54 years of history of Reformed Druidry, and back to its foundation, and then the customs and the laws, which I like to tongue-in-cheek describe them as the Book of Recommendations, because it does claim to be non-dogmatic, though there is some dogma for those, especially if you want to enter the priesthood of the Reformed Druids. There's dogma. But aside from customs, laws, history, there's extensive books of liturgy and meditations and other useless information like that, because there are many Reformed Druids that don't even read this. They just kind of learn the basic gist of the RDNA, and then they want to identify as a Reformed Druid. And that's acceptable as well. It's like for those that want to go through rites of passage and ordinations, that's available if you can find somebody who is eligible to ordain you. And of course, there's my philosophy of what I called the bootstraps method of basically doing a series of self-dedications, founding your own proto-grove, and writing rituals to kind of designate people of different orders. And that's where the dogma gets in the way, but but the bootstrap method, that's the thing. For a time, I would have recognized anyone who used the bootstrap method as a form of self-initiation all the way up to the third order. But then it's like when I realized it's tricky to get around that dogma if you want to do it properly. And of course, now we're getting into sticky words like properly, which is kind of, if you want to use a bigger word, you get into orthodoxy. And so I've actually been called, I've been referred to as an Orthodox Reformed Druid of North America. And there are a few of us out there, but I think it's easier to call me an Arda thumper, because Arda is the abbreviation for a Reformed Druid anthology. And so it's kind of like being a Bible thumper, only it's like you hold up this book and give it a few thumps. So good luck with that. This book has been a major influence on my spiritual path, because I use the liturgy. I love reading the history over and over again so that I can get it right when I'm telling people about it. Well, this has gone on long enough. I do have other influences, but those are the major ones in relatively chronological order for me. Thank you for watching my video, and we will see you next week.